Welcome back to yet another live podcast on your favorite football updates channel on this beautiful Saturday, the 14th of February 2026. Happy Valentine's Day to all the lovers out there, especially if you are football lovers. To my friend Matovo Billy Matthew, I say happy birthday to you, sir. Um, Hope you get to enjoy your day, Council. Yesterday, by the way, was another Council's birthday. That's Council David Rebuga, Christopher. So happy belated birthday to you, and I hope you did enjoy your day yesterday. So it's been it's that kind of month. I know for a fact that in a couple of days time, or if not a full week, I think on the 23rd somebody else will be celebrating their birthday. And anyways, I hope all of you guys do enjoy. So happy birthday to you, Council Billy Matthew Matovo. Enjoy your day today. So this beautiful morning, we'll be discussing, or once again, looking at the events from the world of football. Yesterday, Chelsea did thump Hull City to advance to the fifth round of the FA Cup, the kind of result that you would expect for a Chelsea team who fielded a very, very strong starting 11. We'll be looking at what that starting 11 looked like. We'll be looking, of course, among the key notables was the return of their captain in Richard James. So very beautiful game there. Pedro Neto did in that one. Beautiful action. If you are a Chelsea fan, there was plenty of positives to take away from that and something to be overjoyed in that result, even though there are things that you hope can be corrected or can be bettered, because people like Liam Delap really managed to provide 2 assists in that game. I think he would have hoped to have a much better game than the one he would have ended with on the night. So there was that as well. So, but it's football. It's football. It does come with all that. We'll be talking about Raheem Sterling, who, after many months without kicking a ball, is set to be back on the playing turf after signing for a Dutch side. So we'll be talking about that as well. And then, of course, I will be revisiting what action you could be having on your way in as far as the weekend is concerned. Remember, in the UK, there's no Premier League. It's all about the FA fourth round because we are at the round of 32, where we still have 32 teams in action. That means 16 games to be played, and one of them was already played yesterday. So the action will go until Monday, I think, when Brentford play away to Mansfield. So it's going to be quite the busy weekend in as far as that is concerned. In the Spanish La Liga will continue. Barcelona will have to wait until Monday when they play Girona, but Real Madrid are going to be in the thick of action, I think, on Sunday against Real Sociedad. In the Italian Serie A, there's some, excuse me, just having our audience tested. In the Italian Serie A, we have some blockbusters. We have Inter Milan against Juventus. We have, I think, AC Milan against AC Roma. Stand to be corrected on that one. But yeah, some really big fixtures are coming our way this weekend over there. In the German Bundesliga, the only hope is that Bayern Munich will continue with their winning streak, So we'll be looking at all that and more. So Real Madrid play today, not on Sunday. They play today, not on Sunday. So be sure to catch that. Then the Italian Serie A, it's actually Napoli versus Roma, not AC Milan. So, but yeah, that's for Super Sunday. And then for Saturday, it's Inter Milan Juventus. That's the big game there that you ought not to miss out on in as far as the weekend is concerned. So we'll be, looking at that. Tottenham Hotspurs have have already appointed a new interim manager in the wake of the sacking of Thomas Frank. We spoke about him yesterday. We spoke about the former Juventus boss in Igor Tudor, who has agreed to take on the reins at Tottenham Hotspurs until the end of the season as an interim. He does have a fairly good reputation joining clubs as an interim, although on an overall scale, you may say he does not have the kind of stellar career that one would hope for. I was reading somewhere, and some people were questioning the decision of Tottenham's choice to appoint Igor Tudor, and they were saying he's oftentimes emotional, and he may not have the wills to control his tempers sometimes. And not that he will fight players or anything, but You know, when you're passionate about something, sometimes things slip through the cracks. Things you let things get to you in a way. So, but yeah, that's all that is happening. So Igor Tudor, we spoke about him. You remember he was at Juventus between March and October. He went to Juventus after the sacking of Maximiliano Allegri and was there as an interim boss until the end of the season. Then, when the season ended, they had engagements in about a fortnight for the FIFA Club World Cup over there in the United States, which he continued to guide them through. And then subsequently, the season was started, and what happened was they decided to appoint him. On a permanent basis, but results did not go his way overall, because in his final 8 games with the club, they had 5 draws and 3 losses. So they decided to part ways with him. So it really eventually did not work out for the two parties. But that wasn't the first time he was being at Juventus. He did play for the same club between, I think, 1998 and 2007. Then also he was part of Andrea Pirlo's coaching staff back in 2020-2021 season there. For those of you who remember that Andrea Pirlo was at one point appointed as Juventus's head coach. So very interesting stuff. So he is the man going to take charge of Tottenham Hotspur for the remainder of the Premier League season with 12 games to go. Really, they have still engagements in the UEFA Champions League, where they qualified for the round of 16, having finished 4th within the top 8 of the league phase. So they are waiting to find out their opponent after a fortnight's play of the UEFA Champions League playoffs that start next week midway. So we'll be waiting for that. Previously, he's also managed teams like Galatasaray. In Turkey, he's managed teams like PAOK. In Greece, he's managed Olympique Marseille in France. That's in 2022-2023 season. So yeah, he does. And then I think Hellas Verona and also Udinese, who he helped avoid relegation back in 2018. So he has a fair share of experience, although, like I said, his CV is not the most glowing in terms of achievements, because I think he's only won the Croatian Cup back in 2013 with a team called Hajduk, something like that. So anyways, that's the man that will be in charge of Tottenham Hotspur. Remember, their next game, having been knocked out of the 2 domestic cups, that's the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup, his first assignment will come in the North London Derby when they take on Arsenal on February 22nd. So the advantage for him is that he has a good number of days to get his team well drilled and well prepared to take on the Gunners, who seem to be having a whole chunk of trouble with injuries piling up in their squad following their 1-1 draw against Brentford on Thursday. Martin Odegaard was seen limping away from the stadium. We know that Kai Havertz is already injured. We know that Bukayo Saka looked unfit in that game because he was just returning from injury. We know that Mikel Merino is out for an extended period following his surgery on the right foot. Then we know for a factor that players like Max Dorman are only returning back from injury. So then William Saliba is still out through illness. I was reading some reports earlier on today, and it was being suggested that he will be absent, that he could be absent in Arsenal squad that takes on Wigan Athletic. Whereas I, for one, do not expect him to feature in that game. Nonetheless, I think it will be important or valuable to hear that he is available and back, fully fit. So it doesn't help the team much when injuries start piling up, possibly at the wrong end or the wrong time of the season. So, and yet we all know that Arsenal are still fighting on all fronts in all competitions. That the EFL Cup, where they're into the finals, then of course the FA Cup, where they're going to play Wigan on Sunday. They're still in the UEFA Champions League, and they are leading the Premier League table with 4 points. But like I said yesterday, Tottenham, they themselves, Igor Tudor comes in with the whole list of injuries to deal with. OR says, Viola, hi, regards from Turkey. Thank you so much, OR, there from Turkey. Good morning to you. How are you doing, my brother? I hope you're doing okay. Best Ugandan commentator ever. Thank you so much for the compliment and the kindness. So, like I was saying, Igor Tudor himself is not going to have a walk in the park because, first of all, he has no Premier League experience, and whereas it's not a holy grail that once you have Premier League experience, then everything will go smoothly for you. But it does help to be a factor if you have the Premier League experience. So he doesn't have that, and then he walks into a dressing room that is a bit all over the place. You have a Christian Romero, the captain, who keeps getting red cards left, right, and center. Once in a while, chooses to attack his bosses in terms of the Tottenham hierarchy. You have so many injuries to key players like Richarlison, James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski, Lucas Bergville, all those kinds of players. So that are critical to the team. Something that, did not help Thomas Frank when he was in the job because part of the reason I want to believe, beyond a reasonable doubt, that results did not go his way, besides all his other weaknesses, including the failure to establish a clear playing style for Tottenham Hotspurs, is that those injuries were too critical. I mean, some of those players have not kicked a ball for Thomas Frank ever since the start of the season. James Maddison got injured back in June during the preseason game against Newcastle. Rodrigo Bentancur was out through injury. Of course, for him, he played for him for some time. Dejan Kulusevski did not kick a ball for Thomas Frank. So, and then we know Dominic Solanke was out for an extended period of time. As we speak, Wilson Odegaard did suffer, I think, an anterior cruciate ligament injury. So his season is as good as done. So they've been so unfortunate with injuries, and unfortunately for them, this is not the first season. They had a similar problem last season under Ange Postecoglou. They had so many injuries that he decided to pivot towards the European competition. That's the UEFA Europa League. Thank God they eventually managed to win it when they beat Man United by goal to nil in the finals at San Mamés, thanks to that goal by Brennan Johnson. But back home, domestically, they did not perform. 22 losses in the Premier League, and that's why at the end of the season, after the season review, Daniel Levy, then Tottenham chairman, decided that they should part ways with Ange Postecoglou. They did part ways with him, bringing in Thomas Frank a couple of months in, and then Daniel Levy steps down or leaves the club as chairman, and that left Thomas Frank into the firing line because really in years gone by, Daniel Levy would take a fair share of his blame for what went wrong and right at Tottenham Hotspurs. This time around, he's not there. He's not there to be the shield that takes some of those shots that come through from the fans. Right now, what you have is what you had recently was Thomas Frank was everything. You have Vinay Vektishim as CEO in the background. You have a Johan Lange or Leng, that's a sporting director who never appears in the media and things like that. So it becomes a bit tricky or overwhelming, perhaps, for a manager. And then, let's not forget, you had the manager who had come from Brentford. Yes, he had Premier League experience, and he came from an entirely different team. Then you cannot ignore the fact that there are players that they wanted to recruit and never managed to lock them down. Players like Morgan Gibbs-White, players like Ebelechi Eze, players like Anton Semenyo, Brandon Belmo. They were interested in all those players. They ended up with Xavi Simons, who, unfortunately for him, has yet to find his footing in that team. They've lacked a playmaker in the absence of James Maddison, and yet they did not get the other two in Eze and Morgan Gibbs-White. So they've had their struggles. So I think with Tottenham's lack of success is that it's bent on a number of factors. It's not really entirely about the manager, because if it was happening to Thomas Frank, then we all remember one too well. It's not less different from what happened to Ange Postecoglou last season. So we'll have to wait and see. In terms of filling the position as a permanent role, of course, they want to wait until the end of the summer. But Roberto Di Zerbi, among the names they are looking at highly on that list, Roberto Di Zerbi recently left Olympique Marseille. They would love Mauricio Pochettino. I think if Tottenham want a safe bet, they will go for Mauricio Pochettino. Why? Because he's already loved by the Tottenham fans, and I think they will be more willing to be patient with him than anybody else. But also, you have a whole set of young managers out there that can come to Tottenham and get the job done. And look at Xabi Alonso, out of work ever since parting ways with Real Madrid. Look at Xavi Hernandez, still out of work ever since parting ways with Barcelona. Now this is the second season running. Then you have we mentioned Roberto Di Zerbi. You're going to have an Oliver Glasner leaving Crystal Palace. You're going to have Andoni Iraola, whose contract runs out at the end of the season. We are not sure whether he will renew or not with AFC Bournemouth. You have a Marco Silva at Fulham. And I'm not saying that they should go with either of those. I'm simply saying they do have the options at their disposal should they want to make an appointment. So one, it will boil down to their vision. A lot of managers have come out to say that Tottenham are the kind of team that lack ambition. In the sense, one season starts and you're expected to compete on all fronts, and yet somehow you feel that you do not have the sufficient tools to be competing on all fronts. So, and those kinds of things really. So anyways, we'll leave that conversation at that and move on to the next topic for this morning. Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling did sign for Feyenoord there, and expect to see the 30-year-old, English winger back in expect to see him back, on the turf quite very, very soon. Of course, he was a free agent after he part ways with Chelsea in January on mutual agreement, or that means the two parties sat down and agreed to pay him, to release him from his contract. After all, he was not playing. Last season, he was on loan to Arsenal, where he did not work out, returned to Chelsea, and they had already put him out of their plan. So he knew right from the onset that he was never going to play. But because he was on 300,000 grand a week, he made the decision not to leave Chelsea unless there was a club that was willing to match his wages. But given his recent performances over the last 2 seasons or so, nobody was willing to take the risk on him. Not even Saudi Pro League clubs that have been known to sign these stars from Europe. So that in itself was quite telling, really, I thought. So, but anyway, expect to see Raheem Sterling over there in the Dutch Eredivisie. Then also, speaking of recent free transfers, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain joined Celtic for a short-term contract until the end of the season, and on his debut, he scored against Livingston as Celtic beat them by 2-1. So quite the dream start to his Celtic career over there. I've always liked Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. My reservation was always to do with his injuries. He seems to struggle oftentimes with injuries, but there was always a good player in there, and that's why Liverpool were able to buy him for about £35 million from Arsenal. So yeah. Then, okay, we'll leave that at that. Then, this is according to The Athletic. The Barcelona players have expressed their tactical concerns with Hansi Flick. Some players do not think they can play such a high defensive line in big matches, especially without Rafinha and Pedri. Now, these reports come in the aftermath of Barcelona being thrashed by 4-0 against Atletico de Madrid in the first leg of the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey, after which Barcelona apparently went to their website and enlisted 6 reasons as to why a remontada is possible against Atletico de Madrid on third match in the return leg. Now, we are all allowed to dream, and in football, anything is possible. I think it would be criminal. This is my thought. Regardless of whether Barcelona by then have a full squad, whether they have a Robert Lewandowski, Rafinha, a Pedri, a Lamine Yamal, every little bit of exceptional talent that you think Barcelona have at their disposal, even if they have that player, if Atletico de Madrid were to squander a 4-0 aggregate advantage going into the second leg to be knocked out of the of the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey. When you get to the semi-finals, the silverware is in sight. Silverware is in sight. That is what happens. Silverware is in sight. And you must do anything, not risk it. In other words, you must be thinking that we are almost there. We are almost there. That's the kind of belief you have to take in. I'll give you the example of when Arsenal won 3-2 at Stamford Bridge in the first leg of the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. They knew that they had a job to do in the second leg and was not, and that job was to see out the tie through and get to the final. Once you get to the final, you have your fingers on the trophy. You have one hand onto it. Now, what you do in the final is what determines whether you get your other hand to the trophy, or the one that is already touching it is the one that is removed. That's when you lose the final. If you lose the final, then it goes to your opponent. But once you get to the final, you have Team A with its one hand on the trophy and Team B with the other hand on the other side of the trophy. Whoever wins that battle is the one that gets the two hands on the trophy. So you must put yourself in that position. So for Atletico de Madrid, for everything that is not gone well this season, because of the kind of investment that they've had in recent times, because they've really, really brought in some good players. I think Diego Simeone is the kind of manager that cannot tell the world that he's not been supported financially by the club when it comes to reinvesting in his squad. When you look at the players that they've managed to bring in over the last 2 years, Julian Alvarez, when you look at Johnny Cardoso in the summer, when you look at players like Alex Baena, when you look at Ademola Lookman, who recently joined in January, when you look at Matteo Ruggeri, and all those other players that they've managed to slot in, it must be there must be something that they work towards achieving, as opposed to just participating. And the Copa del Rey is a perfect example or perfect route they have to a piece of silverware, because the other semi-final is involving Athletic Bilbao and Real Sociedad. Now, Real Sociedad are leading the tie by a goal to nil. Now, it's not to say that whoever gets to the final from the other side will be a walkover or an easy game, but you fancy yourself. If you're Atletico de Madrid, you wouldn't want to meet a Real Madrid or a Barcelona in the final. You'd rather meet any other team from the Spanish La Liga top flight than other than those two. So you already have an advantage on one of them, that is Barcelona. You're leading the game by 4 goals to nil. Then why not go see it through and win that game already? Because I did say during that game, that 4-0 win for Atletico de Madrid, that Barcelona needed to score at least a goal or two in that game to give themselves a chance going into the second leg. But unfortunately for Barcelona, they didn't. So it makes the tie even harder, because while they, according to the players, they think, 2-0 in the first half, 2-0 in the second half, then it's all back to square one. And once it's back to square one, anything can happen from that point on, whether it goes into extra time, whether it goes on to penalties, anything is possible, but the job is twice harder than it would have been if they had gotten at least a goal away at the Wanda Metropolitano. I do not think they'll cry over it. They'll simply have to move on. Hi, big man. Hi, Pedri. How are you doing, my brother? Good morning. Yes, I was just, we're talking about Barcelona in the wake of, apparently, according to the Athletic, some players expressing concerns over Hansi Flick's, tactical measures, especially of playing the very high line against big teams in the absence of some of their players like Pedri and Rafinha. Barcelona relies on the kind of model of a forward strength. By forward strength, I mean they rely on that midfield dominancy and having those electric, forward players who can hold onto the ball and for more than just a second in Lamine Yamal, in Rafinha. So in those kinds of players, so it gives them an advantage, So, and yet against big teams, when you do not have those kinds of big players, of course, it's easy to say that all Barcelona talent is good. But let's be honest. Pau Kubasi is good, but without that senior leadership, it's going to be lacking. Marc Casado playing alongside Frankie de Jong is not the same as Frankie de Jong playing alongside Pedri. We know that Pedri is the better player. So without certain figures, maybe the Barcelona players are thinking we need to have a change of tactic. We cannot have approached every game the same way, even without certain figures within the starting 11. So in that kind of thing. But for Diego Simeone, there cannot be any excuse whatsoever, especially for a manager, transformed or otherwise, who know that in his DNA can mastermind, a very defensive guy. Uncle, your shirt is inside out. No, please, it's not inside out. It's right where it's supposed to be. The no-fly guy, uh-huh. I think we can make it against PSG in 2017. It seemed impossible. I think we can do it. We will play in Camp Nou, and we will have Pedri, Rafinha, Marcus, Gavi. We will punish them. Our first half will end 3-1, second half 2-0. Well, that's what Pedri envisions. Like I said, anything in football is possible. We've seen the comebacks before. But like I say, for me, I'm not concerned about Barcelona in this particular case. My argument was that it would be criminal for Diego Simeone to let his team get knocked out by Barcelona with that 4-0 advantage. Because first of all, they have to be defensively solid. And in that very game that the Barcelona loses 4-0, it's not like they did not create chances. They had a chance where they hit the crossbar. Mosso had to make a couple of saves in there. Lamine Yamal wasn't as bad as the result in itself would want you to believe, So they had chances in there. So on the other side, you say I rebuke it. You rebuke what? You rebuke the prediction for Pedri. If they score 4 in their own stadium, we can't score 6 in our stadium. Eric Garcia, this will happen. Well, talking is one thing, getting it done is another. We know that you guys there will be singing about the remontada at going back to the Camp Nou, And like I said, it can happen. But all I'm saying is that it would be criminal for Diego Simeone to let his team get knocked out with that advantage going into the second level. We've seen Diego Simeone get the better of an even better Barcelona team than the current one. I think back in 2011, when he needed a draw on the final day, I think to win the Spanish La Liga. So, whereas it's a different set of facet of players on both sides, then, he still can pull off something. You say, Son of Soweto says, what's your opinion on Radcliffe's statement and Guardiola's response on black people and football? What did Guardiola say about black people and football? The last comments I saw from Pep Guardiola were regarding, what had happened in Gaza and Sudan when he was talking about the wars, and that they, as a people, they need to care more. Pedro says Sir Jim Radcliffe is a donkey. Now, okay, for those of you that are not familiar with what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said, he said immigrants have colonized the UK. And he goes on to say there are about, 12 million immigrants that have gone to the UK in recent times. Apparently about over 9 million working people that should be working are living on government benefits and things like that. Now, I'll say this. First of all, I find the comments of Sir Jim Ratcliffe very unbecoming. On this planet Earth, if there's any country that ought to never complain about immigration or immigrants, is the UK. The UK is one of the few countries that colonized almost every big country that you can think of on planet Earth. They colonized the USA, they were in China and Hong Kong, they were in India, they've been all over the place. So they went and announced to the rest of the world that they were in existence. Countries like Luxembourg, countries like Liechtenstein, countries like Norway, Denmark, Finland are not complaining about immigrants. I'm not saying it's a perfect world for them. I'm simply saying the UK are the orchestrators of their own mess if they think it is a mess. But also, what's the hullabaloo about immigrants? So what if I leave my country to go to another country to seek greener pastures? What is it so much that immigrants take that the rest of the citizenry think they can no longer access? Do they feel the space that the rest of them lack oxygen? I never get it, you know? The other day we were talking about this issue quite similarly with Pedro. And I mean, I understand a country having measures to say, if you are an immigrant, you may not allow to participate in things A, B, C, D, or when it comes to work, that we must preserve our community. I understand community preservation to say, okay, let's say if you're an immigrant, let's say we are reserving maybe cab jobs, taxi cab driving jobs for our people. I understand, and I'm not saying cabs in particular, but I can understand if certain jobs or industries are being protected to be run by nationals for economic and security reasons or otherwise. I can understand that. But this idea that you're suffocating us, that we've run out of space, it doesn't count for me. I understand keeping out immigrants if you're fighting crime, if you think majority of this a group that is coming in are the orchestrators of crime. I understand that part. But if you have a section, and what type of immigrants do they have? Let's be honest. There's war in Ukraine. So if immigrants are coming in from Ukraine, so what? You know, they're seeking refugee. It's not like they woke up and said, no, we failed to make it here. We need to go elsewhere. And we've chosen the UK. There's war there. You know, in Sudan, there's war. There's been war raging on. In Eastern DR Congo, there's literally always war. You know, in South Sudan, there's so much instability. South Sudan are like a burning candle left on the outside with the wind blowing. Anytime it can blow out. Anytime South Sudan can explode into war. The vice president in Riek Machar, last I checked, was under house arrest, facing some charges. You know, the president, Salva Kiir, is all over the place. He's an old, ill man. Not so far back ago, I was reading that he had appointed a dead man into a position, and he had to fire all his aides for that era. Now, when you have a South Sudanese moving, let me tell you, Uganda has the largest refugee community in Africa. The largest refugee community. We have people from South Sudan. We have people from Sudan, the Sudan of Khartoum. We have people from Eritrea. We have people from Somalia. We have some people from Djibouti. We have people from DRC Congo. We still have people who left Rwanda during the 1994 genocide. I mean, we have all sorts of people. Now, Ugandans have their frustrations with some of these immigrants. And some of those frustrations relate to society assimilation and intermarriages. When some of these groups come into the country, they do not want to blend in with the society in terms of, you know, relating with them, in terms of intermarriages and things like that. So, for example, if you're a Somalis and I'm a Ugandan and I want to marry Somalis, that's twice harder. So they have their reservations. Now, the other reservations is that immigrants, some of them or many of them, get some financial resources. So oftentimes they have financial advantage. One, when it comes to renting, the housing market in some places has gone high because of immigrants. Two, the immigrants have entered petty businesses or small businesses that ordinarily you have Ugandans doing. For example, you have tuk-tukus. They're more like taxis, small, you must have seen them somewhere in Vietnam or many of those Asian countries, they use them. India, they've opened small retail shops. Now, I understand that bit of frustration, but for Ugandans, largely, even without the business, it's about the assimilation into society, because we have a society that is so infused that we are not accustomed to tribal differences, in the sense of you're not allowed to interact with this tribe because of A, B, C, D. That's the history. So I understand countries having laws that curtail immigration, that curtail immigrants. I understand for the right reasons. But when you have billionaires like Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who is leading a club like Manchester United, for majority of whose playing staff are immigrants or foreigners, Bruno Fernandes from Portugal, Diego Dalot from Portugal, Senny Lomans is from Belgium, Lisandro Martinez is Argentine, Casemiro is Brazilian, Manuel Ugarte is from Uruguay, Benjamin Sesko is from Slovakia, you have Ibrahim Mbumo from Cameroon, Amadou Diallo from Ivory Coast. So what is he trying to say? Is he trying to suggest that only English players should play for Manchester United? I've seen some of the clips of Man United fans are reacting to those comments, and they said they were outrageous, they were out of line, that Manchester United is a multicultural community. Sir Alex Ferguson is from Scotland. Okay, maybe we can exclude Sir Alex Ferguson because UK is one and the same thing. But I saw a gentleman who was interviewed from Ireland who said, I'm from Ireland. So being here in Britain means I'm an immigrant. So does he want me out? So I think, like I said, of all countries, Britain or England do not have the moral authority to be complaining about immigrants. We had white settlers in Kenya, in the Kenyan highlands. They are from Britain because the British colonized Kenya. We had a fairly good UK community or English community in Uganda during the colonial days. Go to places like South Africa where you have the Dutch because of the historical context. So Britain have been all over the place, and their influence is still far-reaching. So when it comes to the topic of immigration, people focus on the now and want us to blindly follow without remembering what has happened in the past. And that's not going to fly. Okay, let me get to these other comments. Okay, what's your... Okay, I've given the opinion. Mr. Tribe, you got knocked out in the round of 16. Don't wanna hear it. Lolo got knocked out at the round of... I understand, Pedro. Mr. Jim Wright is a donkey. When Roberto Carlos complained about racist abuse, Guardiola said he should focus on football. Let's be honest, Pep Guardiola's history with certain skin tones is not been the very best. We know Yaya Toure complained about certain things. So now, the thing about racism, if we are being honest, it's something that if we wanted to get to rid of our society, may take at least half a century, because I believe that racism or getting rid of racism has to be something that is nurtured. Because for as long as you have a society that nurtures their children into segregating another skin color, we're never going to get there. I'll give you an example. Recently, I was watching a video, I think on TikTok or on X, and some guy was pretending to be blind with a walking stick, and he would clutch onto people's arms as if to seek guidance or to help with walking. And every time the black man touched a white person, either somebody jumped to pull away the white person or the white person shrugged their arm to Now, it's not as black as white as you would think, because the first instinct, first of all, is your personal security to say, who is this stranger clutching onto my arm, regardless of whether they're blind or not? That's the first instinct. But once, let's assume you realize this person, quote unquote, is blind. Do you then offer to aid them, or you let them go? Now, the test was also done with the white man pretending to be blind. And guess what? As soon as people glanced on the side and it was a white person, they seemed more relaxed to help the person continue. So you have those sort of impressions in society. The other day we talked about that game with Pedro about Dani Alves when he got thrown the yellow banana against Villarreal, that Barcelona won. So we've seen them in Italian football with Lukaku, with Balotelli, with all sorts of other players. And you know the funny thing about racism is that even people within the same countries get racially abused. You remember Bukayo Saka after missing a penalty in the finals of the Euro 2020 that were played in 2021? He was racially abused. Bukayo Saka, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford, simply because they missed penalties. But they are UK-born citizens. Their life is all about the UK. So, absolutely, I'm UK-born. New name TBC says, absolutely, and I'm UK-born Asian ancestry. Exactly. So, you have all these people. That at one time we were talking about players being naturalized. For example, DRC Congo are going to get Aaron Wan-Bissaka to play for them. But Aaron Wan-Bissaka is been born in the UK. He's gone there. So all his life and nurturing is from the UK. That's all he knows. When you bring him to play for DR Congo, and this we're speaking in terms of a context and passion or loyalty, somebody was claiming that Callum Hudson-Odoi shouldn't be brought to play for Ghana. And we're saying it's not their fault, So New Names saying he's UK-born and Asian ancestry. It's not his fault in the first place that he was born in the UK. No. And you cannot fault his parents for seeking greener pastures elsewhere. And for me, for as long as we still have space to accommodate a people without harming the fabric of society, without harming the security of the people, we should coexist. Two things are guaranteed in life: taxes and death. At the end of the day, we shall leave this lovely world and leave it for the others to come. Okay, himself immigrated from Monaco. That's the no-fly guy. Apparently, there's something they mentioned about Monaco with taxes and things like that. I saw Nigel. He's called Nigel what? He's a party leader, a big politician in the UK. Nigel Farage, is it called Farage Nigel or something? He was saying that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is right. He's trying to speak in support of him, even though the question to him was about whether he actually apologized. He said no, Ratcliffe did not apologize for the use of the word colonize. Colonize is too big a word. Just because Rishi Sunak, who is of Asian ancestry but a UK citizen, was Prime Minister yesterday, doesn't mean that suddenly London is going to be, that Indian music is going to be the soundtrack to London life. No. He went to Monaco so he doesn't get taxed, which would have helped the UK into improving schools, hospitals, etc. Man United itself would only have 3 starting players against Arsenal if it had no immigrants. Exactly. Exactly. You talk about Nusa Mazraoui from Bangladesh. Mazraoui is from Bangladesh. I thought he's from Morocco. You say Luxo, Harry Maguire. So it's only 2. What a fool Jim is. He isn't a sir, in my opinion. His statement is very unwelcoming. Even Man United went back to say in a statement, we disagree with his words. Hi LFC, good to have you on the podcast this morning. Son of Soweto says racism is common in European football. No room for racism. Sadly, racism is a part of European football. Exactly. I mean, it's a fact that you come to live with. And you see, when somebody tells you that there is racism in European countries, in the USA and other places, people may be hoodwinked into assuming all white people are bad, but that's not the case. Like we have a saying here that I'm trying to look for the loose translation in English, but it's one fish eater that makes the rest of others be abused, or that one person out of a group of a society does one wrong thing and it brings disrespect or brings harm or puts the entire society in disrepute. So I'll give you an example. If you, let's say, you visited Uganda and I treated you badly, you may go out with the impression that all Ugandans are bad, but that's not the case, So I do not want to believe all white people bad, and not all people are racist. And the funny thing about racism is that racism is all over the fabric of society. It's not just in those countries, even in Africa here, racism is there. It is there. When you go to North Africa and you're black-skinned, you could receive some racism. It may be subtle, but it will still be. In South Africa, they still deal with that. They still deal with racial sentiments, even in the post-apartheid era. When you go to, you'll find it in countries where all people are literally of the same skin, and then it's boiling down to tribes. Especially in Africa, you have those things. But at the world stage, more needs to be done to fight racism, because it's just skin color. You're black, I'm black, you're white. You're Asian, you're Caucasian, you're mixed. You're a Trevor Noah, you're mixed. When you go to the coastal towns of Kenya and Tanzania, you have so many people that are mixed. Why? Because of the history of Arabs coming to do trade in Africa. So when they got African women pregnant, they birthed the community of Afro-Arabs. You have an entire community of Afro-Arabs, When you go to Asia, go to UAE, you may get some racism kind of feel. It's there, But that's not to say that every person there is bad. But for us to rid society of those kinds of things, it has to be nurtured. Have you seen kids attending the same school? And I'm talking about kindergarten. Excuse me. I'm talking about young kids. Go to a primary school, a small school, or kindergarten. When you find those kids playing, and when you find those kids playing and interacting, they are not focused on each other's skin color. They simply look at the other kid as all the other kids, as any other person, until any of them is told at home that is black, you're white, that you're not supposed to be friends or interact. And then they begin looking at the other kid in a certain way, because unfortunately some parents do that. I remember There's a clip I watched. It was on the Steve Harvey show. And there were two parents, unbeknown to each other, who had two kids in the same school. And these two kids were best friends. One was black, another was white. And they had been told, I think, to wear something unique. And then one suggested we should wear the same things or the same color. So they told their parents and wore the same thing. Why? Because they're friends. The skin, the tone of their skin has nothing to do with them as human beings. You know, they see beyond those boundaries. And the funny thing is, for example, look at the French national team. Because France, because of their extended influence in Africa, they've had a fair share of immigrants in their country. Players like Paul Pogba are born there. But we know that as people have come to grow, they've known that their lineage, some of them, lies within Africa. Look at Zidane, you know? So, but when you look at the French national team, it has a good number of, dark-skinned players or black players, as you would want to call it. Does that make them less French just because they are black and others are white? Is Blaise Matuidi, is N'Golo Kante less French than Kylian Mbappe? In any case, Kylian Mbappe could have African ancestry lines, but is he less French than who? I'm trying to find a French white player than a Benjamin Pavard. Is he less French than a Desley Doe, a Bradley Bacola, a Steve Mandanda? Like, I just don't get it. You see, go to the USA, where you have 50 states. People from California speak differently, although it's the same language, with New Yorkers. Go to North Carolina. I've not been there, but at least that's what I get. People from New Orleans sound different. But today, America is saying, yeah, you're not coming. First of all, they said they're not giving, they called it what? No asylum. No more asylum if you're Ugandan. I don't know if that extends to other countries. They've put bond fees to travel to the USA. I was watching one of the leading sports journalists saying it's going to be very difficult to watch the World Cup in the USA. Why? Because getting a visa is going to be that hard. Now you can imagine that a journalist who ideally would want to go and cover the World Cup is going to be limited by immigration restriction laws. And yet we're supposed to have this global event being hosted by the superpower in the USA. What is that supposed to say about us as a people? Now, there's the cliche that Barack Obama deported more immigrants than Donald Trump in his reign. Well, just because maybe the era of Barack Obama at the start, particularly back in 2008, social media was not as pronounced as is. Now, like I said, I respect every country having its immigration laws and stuff like that. But I think we should be more accommodative. We should be more accommodative to one another. The world is such a global village. Okay, the no-fly guy says Arsenal first English club to embrace foreign policy. But Wenger, they raised them. No, look at across the entirety of the Premier League. Mo Salah was a PFA player last season. He's an Egyptian. How many times have we seen that? Look at the Sadio Manes, Roberto Fabinho, Gini Wijnaldum. He's from Netherlands. I'm talking about the Liverpool side that won the UEFA Champions League and the Premier League title during Jurgen Klopp's era. Go back to last season. Virgil van Dijk is Dutch. Look at that Arsenal team. Besides Declan Rice, Ben White, Ethan Wanyeri, Bukayo Saka, Ebeleche Eze. The rest are immigrants from France, from Spain, from all over the place. Not too far back, Mohamed El Neni was at Arsenal. He was from Egypt. Go back to the time of Arsene Wenger. He had Bissan Lauren Meyer. He had Habib Korotule from Ivory Coast. He had Emmanuel Shea Adebayo from Togo. You know, all those Alexander Songbilong in midfield. Go to Chelsea. They had a Mikel Obi. They had the Didier Drogba. Right now they have a William Esteval. You see, let's be honest. All developed countries that have tried to fight this immigration so stringently have certain sectors struggle. Because a lot of times, these immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, are some of the people that do the petty jobs that maybe naturals would want to stay away from because they are low-paying jobs. I'll give you an example. The other day when we were talking about it, we spoke about the farmer. I don't know whether they were from Ohio. This guy was growing carrots, and he was near tears. He was literally in mental breakdown because his workers were in hiding because of ICE. But he needed to harvest his carrots and deliver the supply because he had a contract worth close on to $1 million. And if he had failed, or if he fails, then that means breach of contract. He gets sued. He loses it all. I think America, for all the trouble they receive with immigrants, because it's not to say that immigrants do not come with trouble, because unfortunately, you always have bad apples. You have those that come to deal drugs. You have those that turn out to be criminals. But let's have a fair debate and say you also have thousands of them working on farmlands, working on oil rigs, working on working to keep America clean, working in construction jobs. You know, you remember that case of the American immigrant that was deported to El Salvador, and then there was this whole hulabaloo. They went to court. He was brought back. Then there was a proposal to send him to Cuba. They wanted to bring him to Uganda. Uganda was okay with that, but his lawyers were saying, do not bring him to Uganda. So we're talking about construction jobs, warehouse jobs, mechanic jobs. Those are majority of the people that do that kind of work are immigrants. So they are critical to the success of those economies. It's not like all of them are bad, that all of them are criminals. No, that's not the case. But for every time, if we keep looking at them as such, then we're going to lose the point. Try as much as you can to weed out the bad apples, but keep the good ones around. You know? Uncle, they all say they want to build the wall, but who will they get to build the wall? You know? Again, by the way, even a black English, they want him out. In other words, if you are not fully English, you should leave, which is sad. Like Saka wouldn't be welcome. I mean, at what point do we get to this point? For example, the USA has changed its policy. For example, you being born in America now does not necessarily mean you're American. And they're doing away with that because I understand that people have been taking, especially those that can afford it, taking their wives to give birth to the USA, and suddenly the child becomes an American. Whereas I understand their reasons. It's simple. If you do not want medical tourists, simply say that if you're pregnant, 5 months or more pregnant, you won't be allowed to come in the USA unless it's for extremely different or other reasons that you will have to convince us about. I understand that, but also, this immigration topic is a tricky one. Is a tricky one. When Britain colonized the large part of East Africa, they built what we came to know as the East African Railway. It was built by Indian coolies. They were immigrants from India. That's why you have a large Indian community section within East Africa. The Chinese today are doing a lot of construction projects across Africa. And in Uganda, they've left some women pregnant and given birth to African Chinese. Now, from what I hear, I do not know this to be a gospel truth, but from what I've heard, is that they are not allowed to take back kids they birth with, Africans, back to China. I do not know if that's the policy. So where does that leave that child? Since when is it their fault that their parent is Chinese? So just imagine, there's a case of labor freedom of labor movement. I think it's called, was it signed under the Rome Statute or something? Just imagine Europe decided, or European countries decided, no more this thing of crisscrossing of borders. Just imagine what that would mean. I do not know so much about the I don't know so much about the geographical context, so Spain and Italy, but the other day Pedro was saying they have what? About 2 million Moroccans in Spain go to Italy. They have a fair share of immigrants. Of course, every country that has immigrants has certain issues with them, especially to do with crime. And I'm all for it that crime be fought. But let's be honest. It's not that immigrants are the orchestrators of all crime. It's not like crime wasn't there and then suddenly they came and crime started being there. When you go to the USA, and because I've never been there, so I'll speak on hearsay. When you go to Chicago, there are certain areas that they talk about that are riddled with gun violence. Is that also immigrant-led? Or is that their own society? I hope people wake up to realize we are all equal. God created earth for all of us to love each other, live alongside each other. There is no difference between skin color. We are all God's creation. Who will win the Champions League this season, Uncle? UEFA Champions League. Really a bit of a difficult one to say, I must be honest. But I'll keep saying this. Among the favorites that I look at Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich as one of those teams. I'll put Arsenal in there. I'll put Liverpool, Barcelona, Real Madrid, PSG as the teams that I'll consider because of their pedigree. Because really Barcelona and Real Madrid, and by extension, maybe a team like Chelsea, or the teams that have participated so far this season that have not looked as bright or as big. I know, you see, you're laughing at Liverpool because you think, no, it's impossible because they're having a bad season. This Liverpool side finished what? Third on that UEFA Champions League table. They have the pedigree in the UEFA Champions League. And when it comes to a knockout competition, you see, a knockout competition is different from a league. A league is like a marathon. A knockout competition is like a sprint. if you can gain an advantage at every stage, you can go through. You must have seen the scrappiest of fixtures over the years in the UEFA Champions League. Look at last season when Liverpool met PSG. You remember how PSG advanced? Each side won either of the fixtures by goal to nil, really visiting their opponent, and it ended on penalties, and they went through. So look at how PSG scraped their way through Aston Villa. Go back to recent years where finals have been decided by a goal to nil. Go back to 2020, 2020 Bayern Munich beat PSG a goal to nil. 2023 Man City beat up against Inter by goal to nil. Go back to 2021 Chelsea beat up against Chelsea beat up against Man City by goal to nil. The point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to the UEFA Champions League, as is with any other cup competitions, in a game of knockout, you could have a very good day in office and lose the game in a moment, by moments. So, for example, let's say assume Liverpool find, let's say, Borussia Dortmund at the round of 16. Is it too remote to think that they can knock out Borussia Dortmund? Let's assume Liverpool were to meet an Atletico de Madrid at a quarterfinal of the UEFA Champions League. It's an opponent they have already beaten up before this season by 3-2. They beat up against Real Madrid by goal to nil at Anfield. So, and it's not to say because Real Madrid have been so excellent in the UEFA Champions League, they've been far from that. But the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to the knockout stage, there's something different about it. There's something different about it. There's something that these traditional big boys come with. There's a reason as to why you have very few first-time winners of the UEFA Champions League. Go back in the last 10 years. That's between 2015 and 2025. Look at the last 10 UEFA Champions League winners. How many have been new? Have been winning it for the first time between that period? It's only Man City in 2023 and PSG in 2025. 2015 is Barcelona. They had already won it. 2016, 17, 18, Real Madrid. 2019, Liverpool. They had already won it. 2020, Bayern Munich. They had won it before. 2021, it's Chelsea. They had won it before in 2012. 2022 is Real Madrid. 2023 is Man City. 2024 is Real Madrid. So that's the thing about pedigree with the UEFA Champions League. Rarely do you have a strange team, as on form as they may look to be, as brilliant as they may look to be. Rarely do you have a newbie come up and just win it, So, yeah, I understand your reservations about Liverpool. I understand them completely because you look at them domestically and they're not doing good. I also give the example, look at Tottenham Hotspur. Yes, it is a lesser competition in the UEFA Europa League, but they were doing poorly in the fact that they finished 17th on the Premier League table, but they managed to win the UEFA Europa League. And guess who they beat? A very poor Manchester United. But those two teams were poor in the Premier League, but they were the ones, knocking out all the others in as far as the Europa League was concerned. Like my uncle always says, those who live in glass houses change their clothes in the basement. What is that supposed to mean? What are you trying to insinuate? I didn't understand what you're trying to allude to. But anyways, quickly on the Chelsea game. Yesterday, Chelsea beat up against Hull City by 4-0. A game in which there was loads of missed chances by that Chelsea side, as well as some by Hull City. William Esteval missed a golden chance with an empty net. Liam Delap missed. Guys, you should go and check out Liam Delap's miss. I think he has an attempt on goal. The ball hits the crossbar, gets back into play. The goalkeeper is in front, he receives the ball, and instead of tapping it into the net, he wants to run the goalkeeper again, and then the goalkeeper saves. It's ridiculous. And I was thinking, for a striker that is looking for a goal, for a striker that is looking to get their Chelsea career get going, do the simple thing: slot that ball into the back of the net. But anyway, Pedro Neto scored a hat-trick in that one, with Liam Delap providing 2 assists. I think the other was a goal from a corner by Pedro Neto, and then William Estava also scored. Hull City hit the base of the upright, but also they had another scrappy mischance where Robert Sanchez comes out to try and get the ball. He misses it. He literally jumps over the ball, but then the Hull City player falls, and they couldn't capitalize on that moment. Engineer Yasa says, "Hi, bro. How are you? I'm good. Good to have you on the broadcast. I hope you're doing well there." So it was that kind of game. But the other thing, we saw the return of the Chelsea captain in Richie James. Then also, Liam Delap was beating up against his former side, a team that he played for, but also managed, and who sacked him about what? Now, almost 2 years ago, before he joined Strasbourg, and now he's at Chelsea, beating a team that sacked him. Maybe that should remind us of how we need to be a bit patient with some of our stuff, and particularly in football. We need to be a bit more patient, So, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, that was the game between Chelsea and Hull City from yesterday. Those were the key sort of moments. It was a dominant performance from Chelsea, one that you'd expect when they are up against a championship side like Hull City. They dominated all the key affairs or moments of that game in Chelsea. You say Zimbabwe cricket team doing good in the Cricket World Cup. I've not been following much on the World Cricket T20 that is being played in India and Sri Lanka. I know that Pakistan came back to the table to agree to play in India because the World Cricket Association, I think, were going to be sued by broadcasters because of those things. Pakistan were protesting on behalf of Bangladesh, who protested the expulsion of one of the players to play from the Indian League for security reasons and things like that. So, anyways, back to the Chelsea conversation. Yeah, they had as many as 8 shots on targets. They had 3 off targets. They had the ball possession of up to 76%. So that tells you of how dominant a performance they did have there. Chelsea, you have a good knowledge. I am from India. Okay, thank you. My knowledge about cricket is very, 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 very little, or even almost non-existent at best, because I do not. Cricket is not the sport I follow much, but for me, when it comes to everything about sports, I'll pick snippets of information for as long as I have the opportunity to. So I picked up on that. Then you have teams like USA. Zimbabwe qualified for the World Cup T20 at the expense of the Uganda Cricket Cranes. So they beat the Cricket Cranes to qualify for the World Cup. So, but then in terms of cricket, of course, you have West Indies, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, England. You have teams like South Africa. Those are the known giants of cricket, of world cricket. Ben Stokes, I think I know that one from the English cricket team. There's another country that I've forgotten. Should be around the Asian peninsula there, that are really, really good at. Is it Nepal? No, I don't think it's Nepal. 2 to 3 months before Messi came to India. Oh, I heard about that story, and apparently some people, was it in India where they protested and broke equipment because he was there for a very short time? Yes, Australia, you're good. You're right. Okay, even Nepal. So yeah, you have, but you have a group of about 10 countries that traditionally really, really good. India is one of those. Pakistan, Sri Lanka, West Indies, the UK, South Africa. Um, I think Australia is one of those. It's about 10 countries, very, very good at cricket. They will oftentimes dominate the cricket game. The way, then when it comes to rugby, you also have that sort of feel with the Springboks of South Africa. You have countries like, I think, Argentina in recent times have painted themselves in good image when it's come to rugby and things like that. So, anyways, in the other games I played yesterday, remember we had games in the Spanish La Liga, Elche and Osasuna. That one ended goalless. Borussia Dortmund put 4 past Mainz in the German Bundesliga with Saul Girassi scoring a brace in that one, as well as Bia and and Baini there, the goal scorers. Uncle, what about basketball? Now, no fly guy. I love basketball. Unfortunately for me, I do not get to watch enough of it. Why? Because it's just a bit difficult for my schedule. I'll give you an example. I do a morning broadcast at 9 a.m. East African time. Now, that means I often go to bed at around 2 a.m. Now, 2 a.m. in the night, for us here in Uganda, that's when most games in the NBA kick off. So, if I choose to sit and watch the game, that means I won't be up early to do my other work. So, I'm caught between a rock and a hard stool on that one. But also, the other part has to do with resources that I cannot get access to watch the replay. But any chance I get to watch a basketball game, I'll watch it. Whether it's the Indiana Pacers, whether it's the Golden State Warriors, whether it's the Lakers, whether it's the Clippers, I'll watch. Eastern Conference, Western Conference. I may not fully grasp the modalities. Why? Because I grew up at a time when listening to sports commentary on radio, players like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, may his soul rest in peace, Steph Curry. There's a player I'm forgetting. Russell Westbrook. There's another player. I'm forgetting his name. He has a beard. He has more like his hair is like he's developing a bald head kind of. He's quite tall, dark skin. I'm forgetting his name. He's been quite there for some time. Like their names were really, really pronounced, in the game. And every time those radio commentators, I spoke about them. Yes, Kevin Durant. Yes, that's the name I was looking for. Every time they spoke about those guys, you literally, your head was screaming of, how do I get access to NBA? Now, unfortunately for me, I can't afford paying for DSTV because it costs about what? About $75 per month for subscription, the premium, where you get all sorts of sport. So, but every opportunity I get to keep myself up to date when it comes to all sports news, whether it's going to be athletics that Joshua Cheptegei is going to run. I'll drink from that cup. Whether it's the domestic basketball league where Nam Blazers won the championship last season at the expense of City Oilers, who had won it for the last 10 odd years. I'll do as much as possible to take in something. So I'd really, really love to. But here's part of my objective is, one, to pivot in this sports commentary thing, and once I pivot and I can build sustenance with it, then I can do away with other responsibilities or works that tend to pull me away from this desk and concentrate solely on that. it's the kind of dream that I do have for the longer term, you know. But anyways, in the Italian Serie A, AC Milan beat up against Pisa by 2 goals to 1. Nicolas Fulcru as well as Ruben Loftus-Cheek, the goal scorers in that. Sorry, Nicolas Fulcru's goal was ruled out. Sorry, it wasn't ruled out. It was a missed penalty by Nicolas Fulcru. But then Luka Modric and Ruben Loftus-Cheek scored, while Loyola scored for Pisa as AC Milan beat up against Pisa by 2 goals to 1. That means AC Milan under Massimiliano Allegri this season have only lost one game. Unfortunately, they've had one too many draws. I think as many as 8 draws in the Italian Serie A. But they are second on the Italian Serie A table with 53 points, 5 adrift of Inter Milan. After 24 games played, they've won 15 games, drawn 8. That's one too many draws, but they've only lost one game. They're the only team to have lost just a single game in the Italian Serie A. That speaks to tell you of how well Massimiliano Allegri is doing with this AC Milan side, and that if they do continue on that trajectory, perhaps he could win them some piece of silverware sooner rather than later. Then in the French League One, yesterday, Stade Rennes beat up against PSG by 3 goals to 1. Now, when I saw this game, I thought to myself, oh, it's going to be a routine win for PSG. I don't need to watch that. Unbeknown to me, PSG were going to have their AWS handed to them. And then in the other game, AC Monaco beat up against Nantes by 3 goals to 1. So I tried to catch up on the last minutes of the game, that PSG game. And yeah, Stade Rennes were reasonably dominant. They were not in terms of ball possession, but in terms of doing the right things in the right spaces. But nonetheless, PSG remain at the summit of the table with 51 points. But that means after 22 games played, RC Lens are only 2 points behind them. So if RC Lens win their game this weekend, they can move above PSG. Yep. So PSG lead the pile with 51 points after 22 games played. RC Lens comes second with 49 points after 21 games played. Lyon with 42 points after 21 games played. Marseille in fourth place with 39 points. Stade Rennes in fifth place with 34 points. Lille with 33 points. AC Monaco with 31 points in seventh place, while Augsburg have 30 points, as well as Toulouse in 9th place and 29 points for Angers in 10th place. In the relegation zone, you have Métis with 13 points, Nantes with 14 points, Auxerre with 14 points, while Paris FC have 22 points. They are just a place above relegation. So yeah, then in the German Bundesliga, yesterday, sorry, there was no, we've looked at the German Bundesliga where Mainz lost to Borussia Dortmund by 4 goals to 0. So that's what you did have. Then in the other game in the FA Cup, Wrexham knocked out Ipswich Town, beating them by 1 goal to 0. This Wrexham side is the one of Ryan Reynolds. Yes, the filmmaker or the film star. So that's what is happening on that front. So today, do not miss out on all the key action coming your way in the Spanish La Liga. Espanyol are up at home against Celta Vigo. Getafe play Villarreal. Deportivo Alves play away to Sevilla, while at 11 p.m. Real Madrid will be coming against Real Sociedad. In the German Bundesliga, Bayern Leverkusen will be up against St. Pauli. Eintracht Frankfurt take on Borussia Mönchengladbach. Hamburg SV take on Union Berlin. Hoffenheim take on Freiburg. Werder Bremen up against Bayern Munich, while VfB Stuttgart take on FC Cologne. Okay. Still on Super Sunday, you have before we get to Super Sunday. Oh, yes, in the Italian Serie A, Como will be up against Fiorentina, Lazio against Atlanta, and then at 10:45 p.m., Juventus are playing away to Inter Milan. Big game are coming your way this weekend in the Italian Serie A. In the French League One, Marseille will be up against Strasbourg. Remember, Marseille part ways with Roberto Di Zerbi. Lille play Brest, while Paris FC welcome RC Lens. RC Lens, I think it was last weekend, Alex Saint-Maximin scored on his debut for RC Lens. Then on Super Sunday, Rio Oviedo in the Spanish La Liga take on Athletic Bilbao. Vallecano will be up against Atletico de Madrid. Valencia will be away to Levante, while Mallorca will take on Real Betis. In the German Bundesliga, Heidenheim will play away to Augsburg, while RB Leipzig will be at home against Wolfsburg. In the Italian Serie A, Udinese will take on Sassuolo. Parma will take on Hellas Verona. Torino will be up against Bologna, while at 10:45 p.m., Napoli will take on AC Roma. AC Roma, they are under the charges of Gian Piero Gasperini. In the French League One, Le Havre will take on Toulouse, Lorient will take on Angers, Metis will take on Auxerre, while Lyon will take on Nice. So then quickly, for the FA Cup fixtures this weekend, today at 3 p.m., you have Burton up against West Ham, Norwich City at 6 p.m. taking on West Brom, Southampton against Leicester City, Burnley against Mansfield Town, Man City taking on Salford City, and then at 8:45 p.m., Aston Villa take on Newcastle, while at 11 p.m., Liverpool will be up against Brighton. On Super Sunday, you have Birmingham up against Leeds United, Grimsby Town take on Wolves, Stoke City up against Fulham, Oxford against Sunderland at 5 p.m., while Arsenal will take on Wigan Athletic at 7:30 p.m. Then on Monday, you'll have a game between Mansfield Town against Brentford, while Port Vale on the 3rd of March will take on Bristol City. I don't know what that game is going to be played on March the 3rd. But yeah, that's it. So for those of you that have been part of this morning's podcast, thank you so much. It's already afternoon this side. Good afternoon to you all. The No Fly Guy, thank you so much for being part of our podcast today. LFC, Son of Soweto, Pedri, OR from Turkey, thank you so much. And every single one of you that was part of this podcast, I do not take your love and support for granted. Have yourselves a blessed weekend. And until next time, bye-bye for now.